address the council. Mr. Tippin, we don't have it on the agenda. Before I call this meeting to order, I want to go ahead and you address the council before I call this meeting in order. And you've got the floor. Now, we are, even though we're not in order, we cannot respond in any form or fashion because there is a quorum here. So Mr. Tipton's going to address the council on some items, and then staff will act appropriately after that, and we can give direction, but after the fact, after this day. Mr. Tippin, you have the floor.
Thank you. Man, I keep finding myself at this podium over and over again, man. One of us is living right. But first of all, let me wish you all a very Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
And please make sure you wash your hands out there. There's a lot of sick folks running around. I like them. I like the sick people. But just briefly on a couple things we have going and on your agenda here. I've been visiting with the mayor, and we've been no surprise to anybody. We have a big project going with the behavioral health hospital out between Odessa and Midland. That project is probably 90% funded. It's still short, about $15 to $17 million, but there's still commitments coming in. Y'all know, and it's no big surprise, the number one utilized healthcare in the Permian Basin and probably in the United States is mental and behavioral health, by far. We all know somebody in our family, and if you don't, it might be you. So that needs some type of behavioral health treatment, something that is ongoing. We know this, that when you work with a behavioral health patient, you cannot just treat the patient. You have to also treat the environment that they're coming in from and that you're going to return them to. And what we have going is this Permian Basin Behavioral Health Hospital is going to be a full service behavioral health with services available from children to senior citizens. It's going to address everybody. It's going to be as simple as a few counseling sessions or as intense as I need 30 or 45 days of inpatient therapy. So it is going to meet a very broad range of services that are currently not available, and if they are available, they are extremely underutilized. Right now, 99% of the behavioral health care that's provided is done right down the street, right down here at the hospital in the emergency room. And that is not the place for anybody to get any better, and definitely is not a good use of the resources for our community, the Permian Basin, and really the entire part of West Texas. So what we are in a joint venture with Midland Memorial. We have 3 board members. Midland Memorial has 3 board members, myself included. Our attorney, Steve, he's here with me as well. And we have this behavioral health, and it's going to go. We've broken ground on it. It's on track, and it was going to serve a very large need in our community. And what I've been visiting with the mayor about, and some of our board members have been visiting with some of y'all about, is I know there's some ARPA money hanging out there, and that ARPA money fits right in to what the behavioral health project does. It's, when you look at the definition of it and what it's doing, it's almost ironic how close it is. We visited with Mr. Beckmeyer. Thank you for your time and for your conversation you and I had a couple weeks ago. But I do know that this is a project that in some way, shape, or form will touch every entity in this community, every family, every student, every senior citizen, and ultimately it'll make Odessa and the Permian Basin a better place. That's project 1. Project 2 we have going is we have been working, the mayor again, we started this a couple months ago, about a free clinic that we would like to house on 42nd Street in our 42nd Street clinic for diabetics, for people who can't afford testing, can't afford their blood work, that we can pop up this clinic there free of charge, regardless. They can walk in, we can get them some primary diabetic health care on the spot and get them treated and hopefully on a plan to manage their diabetes. Y'all know too, I said here last time, how rampant diabetes runs in our community, and I made the comment because we have chips and salsa with every meal, including breakfast. And it's just an uncontrolled monster out there. And we have realized that we, as much as we do, and y'all do, for our citizens, there are still some that have some intimidation about going to any clinic because they think that they're going to have to pay. That we want to set this up a strictly free clinic, walk in, get your A1C tested, get you under control, and then get you back on your way. So that is part of the part of another project that we've been working on as well. I'll be happy to entertain any questions. I have Allison here. She's our manager, or I call her our chief director of our foundation. That any funds that come in for the behavioral health will go through our foundation, from the foundation to the behavioral health, just to keep that whole cycle clean and make sure that all the money is accounted for and it goes to the right place. Our foundation has been in business for about 15 years. We do a lot of good work with our foundation, but it's just a way to make sure that the funds get directed to the right spot.
We thank you for your comments, and this presentation, unfortunately, is not on the agenda, so we cannot ask questions or speak about it. Mr. Beckmeyer, would you please add this to agenda on the second Tuesday?
It's already on there. That's when he was scheduled.
Okay, for the consideration of what staff is recommending, and we'll do that on the, officially be able to discuss it and decide on January 12th, right?
Perfect.
Okay.
9th.
I'm sorry, 9th.
Do I hear 10?
Yeah.
Okay, 9 sounds great.
Okay.
And in the meantime, if you have any questions, I have some packets we'll hand out so you can look at it. If you look in that, you have any questions, please call me, call Allison. We'll be happy to answer any of that. If you'd like to see the clinic downtown, we'd be happy to take you there too, let you scope that out as well. But anything that we put in that behavioral health center in the long run is going to do great work, and it's going to be very vital for this community in West Texas.
Without a
Thank you
doubt.
for your time.
Thank y'all. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Let me grab these packets.
I'm going to call this meeting to order of the City Council special meeting. I should put my glasses on, that would help. It being 3:09 p.m. Item 2, invocation will be given by myself. Anyone wishing to join us for a moment of prayer can do so by standing up voluntarily. Father God, we thank you for allowing us to assemble here, that we able to glorify you and be able to do your will, Father God. I ask a special blessing upon everyone here on the dais to be able to cover in the blood of Jesus from the bottom of their heel to the top of their crown. I ask a special blessing for everyone this time of the season, being Christmas and New Year's, that everyone in this chamber, their families, all our city employees, all our citizens throughout Texas, especially send out prayer for the victims of Clarksville, Tennessee, and there are all tornado victims up there. Father God, we ask you for us to give us the wisdom to be able to hear your words and speak your words and to be able to complete your will. And all God's children responded by saying, amen.
Amen.
Thank you, everybody. Everybody can be seated. We're going to move on to item 3, regular. Item 4, consider accept. Can everybody hear me in the back? Can you hear me? Consider accepting a second disbursement of ARPA funds issued on June 2022 to the city of Odessa in the amount of $10,161,479.50. City Manager Bigman.
Okay, I'm just going to read the summary here. Since the first case of coronavirus disease in 2019 was discovered in the United States in January 2020, the pandemic has caused severe intertwined public health and economic crisis. In March 2021, these crises continued. The American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, or ARPA, established the coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds to provide state, local, and tribal governments with the resources needed to respond to the pandemic and its economic effects, to build a stronger, more equitable economy during the recovery, and resolution number 2021R-67, adopted on the 14th day of September 2021, allocated $10,161,479.50 in ARPA funds for local agencies. Resolution 2023R-112, adopted on the 28th of November 2023, deallocated $6,390,374 of the $10,161,479.50 allocated by Resolution 2021R-67. The City Council of the City of Odessa must expend all funds by December 31st, 2026. Any funds not obligated or expended for eligible uses by the timeline, but must be returned to the Treasury, including any unobligated or unexpended funds that have been provided to subrecipients and contracts as part of the award closeout process pursuant to 2 CFR 200.344D, and the total amount to be expended is $9,551,853. There is a disbursement that we got. It was a second disbursement that I believe by previous council was never accepted, and we need to go ahead and accept this.
Council, do we have any questions or comments? If not, I will entertain a motion to accept the funds in the amount of $10,161,479.50.
So moved.
I have a motion by Councilmember Swanner. Do I have a second? Second by Councilmember Cornell. All in favor indicating by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed indicating by saying nay. Motion passes unanimously, 6-0. We're going to move on to item 5, consider resolution to accept the appropriate funds for the amount of $100,000 from an anonymous donor for a donation to the tornado victims of the city of Clarksville, Tennessee. Mr. Beckman.
This anonymous donor made a donation of $100,000. The city determined that that donation would be well spent, for lack of a better word, to help the tornado victims of Clarksville, Tennessee, and we need a resolution to accept this and appropriate it.
Council, any discussion? If no, I'll entertain a motion to accept the $100,000 from an anonymous donor for a donation to tornado victims in the city of Clarksville, Tennessee.
So moved.
Have a motion by Councilmember Thompson, second by Councilmember Vasquez. All in favor indicating by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed indicating by saying nay. Motion passes unanimously, 6-0. We're going to move on to item 6. Consider the appointment or reappointment and salary of a presiding municipal court judge, associate municipal court judge for a term of 2 years. Ordinance, this is the second reading and approval. Mr. Jones?
Mayor, council, this is the second and final approval. Of course, I will need you to vote on this in just a second. You are appointing Robert Martin, who is in the audience in the yellow tie. Mr. Martin, you want to stand up? And he is a career JAG officer, originally from Florida. And he's been licensed in Georgia, Alabama, Florida, and Texas, but he gave up Georgia. So, but he's been in San Antonio the last 12 years or so, as one of the senior attorneys there, I believe, at Fort Sam Houston. And so he's going to be joining us as the presiding judge. And and his salary is going to be set at $142,500. And we also have Judge Kidd, who's being reappointed to associate judge. And y'all know Judge Kidd, he's also a JAG officer as well. And the 4% increase was actually came out to be $106,862. That's the 4% increase. So y'all going to be voting on all of that. And that's who they are. I just need you to make a motion and a second and a vote.
Council, any discussion?
Excuse me, Mayor and
Oh,
Council.
and I forgot before she elbows me.
It has come to the attention that payroll advised us that our payroll munis system cannot start the increase of payroll salary in the middle of the payroll period. So council has the option to see which one they prefer when to start the actual salary increase for Judge Kidd. So the option is to have it either on to start December 24th, 23, through January 5th. That's an option to start his increase, which would give a payroll date of January 12th payday. Or start his salary increase on January 7th for a January 26th payday increase.
Council, any discussion or preference, option one or option two?
So I think in order to be in compliance with him January 1st, we would need to do December 24th, so that he would get the pay raise increase for the January 12th payroll.
Any discussion?
Sounds good.
Option two?
Option one, right?
Option one?
December 24th?
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other further discussion? If not, I'll entertain a motion for item 6 to consider the appointment, reappointment, and salary with the option one of a presiding municipal court judge, option one for associate municipal court judge for a term of 2 years. Do I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
I have a motion by Councilman Mata. Do I have a second? Second by Councilmember Cornell. All in favor indicating by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes 6-0, unanimously. Congratulations. Would you like to be able to address the council, or you're good to go?
Well, I didn't prepare anything, so let's say I'm good to go for now.
There you go.
Welcome aboard.
That's a good military man right there. We're gonna move on to item 7, PSI. Will be presenting their assessment of the Bob Darrington Water Reclamation Plant. This will be Kim and Else. Can you come forward? Introduce everyone.
Mayor, Council, thank you very much. I just want to introduce PSI. They will be doing a presentation on their evaluation of the Bob Darrington plant, and they'll give you some good insight into the current operations, current status, and the overall conditions of the plant.
Okay.
I'm Jenna.
Chip Woods, Form Services.
Greg Mizell, Operations Management in Texas for PSI.
David Temming, Engineering Manager for PSI.
So the point of us being out here
Let's get,
Yes.
she's going to get me the microphone.
Yeah, you need to get the microphone.
okay.
Is it on?
Is it on?
Hello.
Yeah, that's on.
Okay. I can't hear myself. So.
Yeah, it's on.
So we're out here today giving you an assessment on the Darrington Water Treatment Plant. We have been doing our phase 1 project with you guys. That's the water meters. And the point of that project was to help the first step of Odessa guaranteeing their water future for the next 20 years. While we were doing that project, we were looking at energy assessments, which led us to the Darrington plant. And we had started looking at improvements in the plant, and when we were here in July, you had asked us to look at the plant and come back and present to you our assessment. This is what it is. This is just a snapshot and a fraction of the assessment we've done, prepared for council. Predominantly photos, so feel free to jump in at any time. Going forward, the next slide that I have is actually a video, so it's drone footage, in case you guys are not overly familiar with the plant. So it'll play for you.
That had to be recent. Look at it, it's green.
So this was built in the 1980s. There have been significant technology improvements since then, so it is more of just a picture of what it was compared to where you're at today. We focused on there you go. We focused on 3 major things: the health and safety concerns with the plant, compliance issues, the condition of the equipment, and then capacity concerns looking forward. So that is the component 20 to 40 years from now to help secure Odessa citizens their brighter future for water. This is a brief overview, again, for anyone who is not an expert in wastewater plants. We have it all broken down into a legend, but we're gonna go through basically taking you from when the water comes in to when the water goes out. And then I am about to pass it to Mr. Temming, our wastewater.
Thank you, Jenna. So, as you saw before, we are going from the front of the plant to the back of the plant. We found, as I go through this, you'll see, primarily looking at the pictures, you'll see a lot of the same things. We get into a lot of concrete issues, that's failing concrete. Get into a lot of corrosion issues with structural items. Ventilation issues, which also relate to those corrosion issues, which result in safety issues. So you kind of see that throughout all the pictures. We start with the inflow. That's where TCEQ has been out already, looking at odor issues. So there's some odor remediation that really needs to be done at the inflow point. Not a whole lot you can see there. On the headworks, you can see immediately the first thing you see in the picture is corrosion. Safety, the fence needs to be repaired, corrosion issues also with the piping. When you get into the bar screen, and now you're getting a little farther into the system, there we're getting situations where this is the other thing that pops up multiple times, is typically the overhead cranes aren't functioning. So there are crane issues, corrosion, as you can see up on the wall, even though it's a relatively near roof. Your heavy corrosion, oftentimes ventilation issues are the key component to that. In this case, the bathroom doesn't work, and the equipment is starting to get used, close to the end of useful life. Any questions so far?
The equipment that we're looking at right here, what is it?
That's actually the bar screen. So
What
what
is
it does is takes the larger items that you get into the system coming in and starts taking those out of the system.
So it's your first line of defense, and this piece of equipment is being used all day, every day, so it is getting beaten down daily, which is why the maintenance of it is very, very critical, and that's how it's also reaching its end of the useful life, because it is used so often, and it's your first line.
It's over 30 years old?
Actually, it is almost 20 years old, but for a piece of equipment that's used this often, it doesn't have a very long life in that sense, especially with the gaseous atmosphere without the ventilation here.
In an earlier video, you spoke about odor. Where is that coming from?
That's the inflow itself coming into the plant, where the water actually first comes into the plant.
Okay.
I can address that real quick. We've received a violation from TCEQ for an odor nuisance out at the plant. It's right coming from the headworks. And what's causing it is we have that large influx line Q that's just been put into place, which is a gravity line. It's a large line that doesn't have a lot of volume right now because it's not at capacity. So that wastewater allows to aerate properly through the system. So we're getting odor nuisance throughout that whole line itself. What we've done is we've gone through and we've aerated the manholes, put grates on them to eliminate some of the out of the plant itself.
Or reduce it? I guess it
It's
reduces.
reduced it at the plant, but basically we just moved it down the line.
Yeah.
It's a lot of stagnant water.
I'll actually be coming to you here in the near future, asking for a request as well to do a study on that line. Again, TCEQ's already given us one violation, and we're on their radar, so just so you're aware
Okay,
of that.
so Kevin, that was line Q that it was completed? And
Correct.
so are we having issues of stagnant water throughout the whole line because
That's
it's what, 1.6 miles, if not more than that?
That's correct.
And so the thing is, the diameter of the line is what, 36 inches?
It goes up to 48.
48. So because, and what type of volume, what's the maximum volume that would be able to?
That could, right now, the plant itself is only doing 7 MGD a day.
Okay,
So that's the majority coming through that line Q. The capacity itself can go up to 12. And
Okay.
again, we're just, and it's not being pushed, it's not a force main anymore, it's a gravity fed line. So that water is just not moving, the capacity of the pipe is too large for the volume of water.
we're gonna have to address it.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Kevin, when was that violation? Was it written recently?
Yes, it was in November.
Bless you, bless you.
We did address it. We went through the process. We explained what we had done to eliminate the odor nuisance. But just so you're aware, we are on their radar,
Yeah.
so they are gonna keep coming back.
Was there a fine associated with that
There was no fine associated.
this
But
time?
we could get into some sort of enforcement action if we don't do something soon.
And how does Line P play into all this?
As far as, it's not gonna do anything right now for the line Q issue. It may eliminate some of the volume, half the volume, it may even make it worse.
I was gonna say, if it reduces the volume, wouldn't it make it worse? Because that's gonna be even less flow, so it's gonna become more stagnant?
Yeah.
Exactly.
So right now, what I'm trying to do, again, I will be coming to council here in the near future. We need to do a study of that line to see what we can do for odor control, so we're not in continuously receiving violations.
Okay.
We did have an issue actually last month where a customer called and complained, and the fire department actually could report it out there and took some readings, and it was off the chart. So we're definitely in some binds there.
Okay. So we had some H2S issues.
And
Very, very much so.
can we go back to the, you mentioned the overhead crane wasn't operable?
So
So
that's a
how are we
email.
moving the heavy objects in there?
There you go.
Right now, we're just using equipment to move the heavy objects. Most of the cranes do work, but they're malfunctioning, they're not working correctly. As far as what's going on in the bar screen, as they said, that operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So if that goes down, what they're trying to do is rotate between the two, because there's basically 2 units in there. So they're trying to eliminate one of the units and let it rest, and then operate the other one. But so far, I mean, they've been able to move things around with the equipment that they have on site.
Jenna, are we at the end of the life cycle, or are we beyond the life cycle of this
You're
equipment?
getting to the end of
We're
it.
getting close.
We're at the end of the life cycle.
Okay. Okay.
So, I'd like to continue.
Electrical is one of those things I guess I haven't brought up yet. You'll see several slides here talking about electrical. A lot of the electrical system is approximately 50 years old because of the corrosion issues, gases in the air, and other issues just with the age of the system, approaching the end of useful life. You're going to see some issues. Here we've got some equipment that's not NEMA 4, really needs to be NEMA 4 in the area. We're lacking ventilation, which also creates additional corrosion. And then the heating within the space is no longer functioning.
So when we mention the HVAC and the heating, we're not talking about operator comfort, we're talking about for the equipment. So if there's not adequate air conditioning when you're hitting 100-degree days and you've got your electric room going, it can cause a problem for the equipment and it can overheat. And the same with the heaters. Last time we were there, it was a pretty chilly day. There's nothing preventing any access or temperature control to the electrical. Oops, sorry.
And kind of continuing on the electrical theme and the concrete theme we started with, you can see the foundation on the electrical has failed. This is a situation where sparking over time right between the bus bars, again, due to some corrosion on the system, older 50-year-old equipment, has created the fire. You can see the remnants from the fire on the floor. Yep. Again, getting back into corrosion, this is the aeration of the electrical building, staying on the electrical side. Fans, one fan's working, one fan's not working, so again, situations with ventilation are an issue. You can see what that's done to the door.
Sorry.
The grit removal system currently is inoperable.
And this is the second phase. After it hits the bar screen, it comes out of the bar screen area into the grit removal. So with that being inoperable, it just bypasses this process.
And what that ends up resulting in is all that grit starts getting into what we're going into the next phases, all of your aeration basins, and just starts building up. And essentially becomes almost concrete down the road. It reduces the capacity of your system. Get flow splitter here. This is currently not functional. So what's happening is instead of, you've got 2 racetracks, and currently the flow is what it is, kind of the last spot for the valve because it's no longer functional. You can see the corrosion there as well.
What does this valve and motor control?
It controls, and correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I understand on this is you're directing, you've got, again, 2 basins that you've got, so you're directing flow into one basin or the other basin or a combination thereof.
Kevin, if this is not,
Pressure flow.
okay, so if this is not working,
You
and we
don't
only have
control-
one, so we're only using one basin?
Well, we're actually using both basins. We're not controlling the flow, it's controlling itself.
So if you're, like, your average MGD per day is 6.5, 7 MGDs, essentially you should be able to fill up your entire aeration and use half that plant for the majority of it. But right now, you're not even able to have that control, which is why it could be a various amount in either. So it's not running either system at their peak efficiency because it's just flowing.
We're having a flow.
So this thing is just open, and it's just going through, and it's just dispersing itself.
That's
Correct.
and it's incapable of being controlled.
Wow, okay.
So this is the aeration process. So this is where we're going through the basins themselves, and you can see the rotors in the image. Typically, those rotors would have a cover on them to help keep some of the overspray down, protects the concrete, minimizes damage to the concrete.
It's also a safety issue.
Also a safety issue. Because, and so, I'm just trying to look up there to see any additional things we wanted to really talk about.
This is the most maintenance heavy process of the entire wastewater treatment plant. You have something like 50 motors, almost, I'm sorry, the numbers are escaping me, but these rotors that you see where the water is coming off, this is where the majority of the operators need to be spending their time, since it is heavily maintenance intensive. So with these processes not being up where they need to be and they're broken off and they're not running as efficient as they should be, it's making it even harder to maintain the plant when it's already at this stage of its life.
And because of the inefficiencies, you're also wasting some energy as well, because more systems are running than really should be running.
Real quickly, can you explain the disc rotor style aeration and then the uncovered rotors lead to additional corrosion to create potential health problems and issues? Can you explain the first one and then follow up with the second one?
So in general, a disc rotor, that style was wonderful in the 1980s. It was probably one of the top line ability for you to get that aeration into the wastewater treatment plant. It's not as efficient as technology today.
What is a rotor? What does it do?
me-
And where would it be located at okay.
So this is jumping to the south oxidation ditch only because there are better photos of here. So these are the rotors.
So those rotors rotate around, as you would suggest, and they just help the flow of water, drive water. It also brings oxygen into the water. So that's what you're trying to do, is get
Okay.
oxygen into the water. And I
Okay.
think there's 29 of these, if I'm
Yeah,
correct.
there's 29 rotors throughout the aeration basis. And each one of those turn, but if you can see through the photographs, we're starting to lose a lot of the discs. They're falling off, they're falling into the basins themselves. As Janet alluded to, we spend the majority of our maintenance time working on these rotors. That's where most of the maintenance is going into. Because if these go down, we have a severe issue.
What would that be?
And you're not getting enough aeration. You're not going to be able to move your process along as quickly as it should.
So we're not be able to clean the
Correct. We're not going to be able to clean it. It's not going to be able to go and separate out the solids to the liquids and go into the clarifiers. I mean, this is going to be a huge issue if we go down.
Okay.
And outside of the aeration basins, in the terms of the rotors, the other thing to be very well aware of, the concrete holding the rotors itself, if those get any more degraded, that can also cause the failure, not just the rotors itself, is what they're housed in.
Okay.
Gonna jump back a little bit
Yeah.
because of that.
And that's a good spot right there. You can see the concrete in that top picture. This is the aeration basins, so you get a sense of what the concrete's currently doing.
So that concrete's also breaking off into the water too, which is causing more problems as it trying to, it's just more sediment, more,
More grit.
More
in the
grit.
system, yes.
And the issue is we don't know what's happening underneath
Below
the
it,
water
yeah,
line.
below the water line.
And some of that concrete actually keeps breaking off on the rotors, so then you're just creating, just keeps building
Just a
and
chain
building
effect.
onto the problem, yeah. And what we meant by health and safety specifically for this is, we go through your plant with a raincoat. There are splashings from the oxidation ditches, all of this is coming up, and like we're saying, this is not clean water at this point, so it does pose an actual health and safety issue to your operators, to anyone in the plant, and what is going into that air. In addition to the general security of, if anything is to happen to that.
North oxidation ditch, there you've got some telescoping valves, and those are non-operable due to corrosion within the system. Again, age just is at the end of useful life.
Kevin, real quickly, these telescope valves, do they control doors, movement of the water? What do they do?
They would control, yeah.
Air control, okay.
Now we're getting into the clarifiers, which follow the aeration basins. First thing you'll see in the picture on the bottom left is the corrosion. Again, most of the pictures do have some corrosion, a lot of fencing, safety issues, concrete issues, you'll see in the top right. Just general safety issues throughout, both structural and safety.
What are the structural concerns?
There are a couple of areas where there looks like the concrete is actually getting to the point of being structurally unsound.
Like the top picture, the top step is about to break off.
I see that.
That's the safety issue.
And
Okay.
then from another safety issue, that arrow pointing on the bottom right photo to a chain link, chain is actually what's holding and, keeping this together. So it really needs to be re-leveled. There's a couple other things going on with here, coupled with corrosion.
So what is the weirs? What is that?
The weirs are this track on the inside that allows the water to flow over with the jaws.
It's in the left picture,
Mhm.
the arrow pointing to that.
So it's not leveled, that track around, so that water doesn't flow in the right way to help the processes keep going. So I put the arrow there so you guys could see like the parts that are above water, the parts that are below, just to bring your attention. So just
Okay.
critical parts of how your water is getting cleaned are not operating in the most peak way, which makes your process longer, more energy intensive, over and over. And that's just the overall redundant theme. More concrete concerns, literally rebar everywhere.
Yep.
All the valves were pretty much past the ability of being repaired, they would need to be replaced.
This is the return activation sludge station number 1. These are the, so you
Screw
can,
pumps.
yeah, the screw pumps. They're pretty much at the end of useful life. They're beginning to fail. Concrete repair, again, what we've talked about there earlier, consistent throughout.
One of the screw pumps is actually entirely down, so if something happens to your other, you have no redundancy. So these are the situations that are happening. There's no redundancy, and one of the things we keep stressing, that concrete, these screw pumps are actually held in place by the concrete. The concrete's crumbling. It's on the verge of a catastrophe.
Yeah, and handrails are missing as well. And it just makes them.
No, in the walkways?
Yes.
So this, I might have a picture, but this one has a walkway to get from like where the photo's being taken around to the back photo. So there is absolutely no handrail on that side, so you just have a concrete that you can fall off. There's missing steps to get up there, but in the big picture, the missing handrail is very minute compared to the rest of the structure.
And I would like the council to know, we are taking immediate ramifications to rectify some of the safety issues before anything else is done.
Before we have,
As far as like the
yeah.
staircase, we're gonna get some prefabricated, metal casing to get on there. Again, just to make it a safe environment for the operators. But some of these safety concerns that they are mentioning, we are taking immediate action to address.
And in no way is this just stuff that appeared overnight, so it's stuff that's been building for decades at this point, so.
Well, that was my question, when TCQ comes in and tells us that we've got to fix this immediately as a city, how do we respond and what do we do? I know we're fixing the violations as they come up.
As far as TCEQ, they're not really gonna say as far as the safety issues on it, they're more concerned about the operational aspect of it.
Okay.
So that's where they're gonna come into play. Again, my first thought was, when I first went out there and did my evaluation as the new director, some of these things jumped out at me immediately, and I said, this is what we need to fix right away. Again, a lot of it is the safety aspect of it. We have to make sure that we're providing a safe work environment for our staff.
Okay.
So those things are being addressed immediately. Like I said, some of the stairways, some of the railing, some of the operational standards can come later, but the safety is the key.
Return activated sludge, again, this is pretty much similar to what you've seen before. You can see the corrosion, exposed couplings on the gearbox, concrete, you can see the concrete failing at the top.
If you notice how thin that concrete looks in that photo, with all the exposed rebar, it just gives you that picture of how much has been corroding away.
Sludge, station number 2. This is pumps, submersible pumps that are approaching their end of useful life, so it's just getting time to replace those. Valves are currently non-operational. Again, crane, as we pointed out earlier, can function at times, it sounds like.
The crane in here cannot be worked at all.
Okay.
So if one of these pumps go out or they're becoming inoperable, we have no way of moving them.
And a lot of the water lines need to be resealed. They're just not at the peak condition where they need to be. Maintenance has not been done on them for decades. I'm not saying it's a recent problem, but the atmosphere and the environment out here is not easy to maintain in this way that it is right now. The flooring on here, I did not have a good picture of it. I apologize, but it is an absolute trip and fall issue. It is packed with,
Mud and debris.
yeah, everything. Various wastewater.
The relift pump station. Here we've got 8, all the bases for the existing pumps are all corroding away. So again, becoming a significant issue that'll need to be addressed. Safety issues with the handrails again. All the valves are in need of repair or replacement.
And the HVAC doesn't work at all. That's both heating and cooling. So in this entire room, it's stagnant. It's not getting any ventilation, and it's not helping the heat load in the summer.
The filtration, really this, do you have any comments specifically on this? This is, I was gonna
Yeah,
say,
this
this
one-
seems to be reasonably functional.
Yeah, I mean, it needs to be
Brought back.
remeasured and calibrated, and the valves are not great either. They are difficult to operate, but they are operating. The breaker boxes need to be replaced, but honestly, the filter is the best part of this plant right now. So we've got some high parts.
The chlorine system currently is, again, we have no head crane that's inoperable. Feeding system does not automatically switch over. The trunnions for the tanks are worn out and non-functional.
And so I had mentioned that the lighting was inadequate at night, but it's also winter time. You have people out there at 6 a.m., 5 a.m., and you can't see anything. It is entirely dark. So that's a safety hazard in its own sense for this specific area.
So you're saying those tanks that we see there are inoperable?
No, they are inoperable, but we need the company that provides the servicing, they're the ones that help us move them.
Again, additional exhaust fans that don't work, and then in the bottom factor, you guys used to have a leak detection that worked. It's outdated, it's abandoned in place, so the plant doesn't have any leak detection. That would be a huge thing to jump on and get a new leak detection system.
And
That's,
the exhaust system there not working in the chlorine space is very important
Yes.
safety-wise.
from that exhaust part to the sulfur dioxide, this is a massive issue. It could potentially be leaking or breaking right now. You guys currently have a pressure system. One of the things that I know that Kevin's been working on is identifying how to replace it. It is outdated. This is a massive concern. The mixers don't function, and it can be a violation.
Yeah, the SO2 I actually will be bringing to you at the next month's council meeting for replacement. The system itself is completely outdated. We need to go to a vacuum system instead of a pressure system. And as well, any of the parts are not available to do anything. The team does not feel comfortable even touching it because they're afraid if they do touch it or start to open it, they're not gonna be able to find the adequate parts to make any kind of replacement. So, again, I will be bringing that to you at the next council meeting for approval to get that replaced, because that is something that's vital.
So sludge handling and transfer station, it is a heavy equipment room. The majority of the equipment is running all the time. There's no redundancy. The piping needs to be reworked. Inadequate floor drainage, you can go in and it's completely filled as well. No HVAC that can actually cool. And then various safety improvements. If you look at the bottom picture, it's hazardous to even be in that area. I do know that there have been some replacements over the past, I think, 5 to 7 years. So the maroon pipings were replaced. So you can see a little bit of the old and the new, but the rest that hasn't been replaced needs to be updated as well.
Here we've got the sludge dewatering. The pipe that you see there, we believe that that pipe is flanges and nuts and bolts are at the end of useful life. And it's not supported adequately. So safety issues there, the electrical MCC is again older, needs to be upgraded. Drainage pipe concerns, HVAC ventilation, again, safety concerns.
And then especially, I know with the crane over there, I just added that photo in because I wanted you guys to see the full room. Doesn't exactly give you confidence in the way that that's laid out right now. Any questions so far? Because like I said, this is a brief overview. This took you through your whole process. After this room, it goes right out to your effluent pond, and then that is what goes out to your citizens. So again, really brief, but this is a synopsis of everything we just went through.
Really, the thing I wanted to point out here, there are areas, we identified both condition being poor, fair, and good. In the risk category being everything from low to high. What this is showing that there are areas within each of the parts of the plant that have a high risk area that are in poor condition.
And high risk doesn't necessarily mean one thing for everything. So for odor control, it's a high risk because it can be a TCEQ violation, could be an issue for your citizens. But high risk can also mean that a piece of equipment is going to fail, and then your process is going to stop. So the risk category is big potential problems, but they don't necessarily all mean the same thing. That is all we have for you.
Thank you. Merry Christmas.
And a happy new year.
Well, you know, you asked if we have any other questions. I'm afraid to ask.
I mean, there's a lot of questions.
Yeah, there is.
My main one is, Kevin, this is no way on you, because you just joined the team and you're trying to make a difference here, but you know, we live in a area where oil and gas is dominant here, and we know how to operate. I mean, there's so many oil and gas companies that produce water. That's what we do here, and something like this would never happen in one of these organizations. Why haven't we ever had that mindset of the oil and gas companies here to set up a 5S safety procedure here and have things in a regularly scheduled maintenance on these valves? You know that anything that moves is going to have to be replaced. So why has it waited 40 freaking years for it to get like this before? I mean, we can do it in every 2 years, replace these valves, replace these motors.
Simple coding.
And it's just mind-boggling.
Well, it's,
The only thing that I can address to that, and again, I can't speak to anything prior to my time here, but a lot of it is you have a lot of manpower issues out there, and I think for the most part, morale got pretty low when there was a minimal amount of skeleton crew basically working out there. And we've had this discussion, I've been talking to the chief operator on a consistent basis about how we need to change the mentality out there, and that we need to make sure that we are leaving things better than the way we found them. A lot of these things are just normal maintenance. I mean, just taking a pressure washer to it, obviously, you know, going through and cleaning it and maintaining it. I think the lack of professionalism kind of took hold there and ran through there like a cancer. And unfortunately, you've just not had the adequate staff to stay on top of it.
so,
And,
so Mark,
we make those changes and we get some good qualified operators out there and some folks who are really passionate and care about their job, you'll definitely see some changes in the future. But we gotta provide them with a safe work environment.
Right.
Yes, absolutely. Go ahead, Mr. Thompson.
no, I just wanted council to know, I spent the weekend going through the 2018 master plan provided by Kimberly Horn. And the wastewater plant is not even addressed, except for the fact that it says it's adequate to handle the growth of the next 25 years. That is the only mention of that I can find.
Because it's not fancy. There's no big bells and whistles on it. It's not nothing
Yeah,
that the people really,
exactly.
It's just not. It's not a Marriott. You know,
So,
it's,
yeah, all they talk about is all the water, all the line P and line Q, and so, I mean, I spent the whole weekend reading it, because I wanted to know there was, because it's obviously something that consultant just totally disregarded.
So the only thing I also
That's
like to
6 years
address
ago.
yeah.
is the fact that, again, you need a team out there who's passionate about what they're doing.
Sure.
And unfortunately, that hasn't been the case.
Well, and I can.
think also, we don't have the appropriate asset management tools, which we have been discussing
Right.
as a group, as a city, and we're working for that.
Yeah.
But the utilities department has no asset management, so we have no idea how old these valves are, when they were put in, when they were maintained, how they were maintained.
Sound familiar?
So those things, you know, just not having the appropriate documentation.
Yeah.
You know, when we're gotta go through storage units to find paperwork, to meet TCEQ requirements, to me, that's a problem, especially in today's technology world.
And it's hard to keep high qualified operators, you know, we're not putting the money back into the plant, and they're working in an unsafe environment, they're gonna leave. I mean, I would leave also. I mean,
I would have to say, I mean, from a standpoint, they have felt like they've been neglected.
you sure?
Yes.
So,
Sure have.
But it looks like nobody's even been out there in 25 years. That's what it looks like. It's totally abandoned. So bottom line is, what's your best estimate on what this is gonna cost to fix and how fast?
Well,
It's something we can't wait on.
before you answer any
Obviously.
question, do y'all have any, Mr. Cornell?
Yeah, I did. I have two questions. The first one was, I'm seeing a lot of specialized equipment, old equipment, and looking at supply chains today. From your aspect of looking at making repairs on that plant, and looking at supply chain issues, are there any? Is almost everything you're seeing accessible to replace?
I think a lot of the things that we can do is we need to modernize the plant
Yeah.
and bring up the technology. Again, I think that would eliminate some of the issues that we have as far as operators, right? The more we can make this automated
Yes.
and make it a lot easier for the operators to handle, and using more modern day technology instead of 1980s technology, we don't need to go back and put in the same type of aeration basins or the same type of processing. We
Upgrades.
need to update them, just
Upgrades,
like
yeah.
we've done at the water treatment plant.
But this is a plant of potential at this point. There is so much that you can do, so much that you can change. Obviously not going back with the 1980s, but this can now be a whole big endeavor to take over and give you guys the efficiencies you want, build you the plant that your operators are gonna love working in and making sure. So to supply chain, there's many ways you can take anything that you're about to do, so it's hard to really speak without that direction of what the city would wanna do with it, or
Yeah.
what type of technology.
The second question, kind of tied into that, would be, with the PSI assessment, there's a lot to do. And from your side, you get the green light to attack this issue. Could you help me understand how you would do that? I know it's prioritized, but I'm not seeing one team running around and fixing I'm seeing various teams going in and working on projects. Could you just elaborate on that?
It could be that way, but right now, we're not asking to do the work, we're not asking to find a way to figure out
Okay.
what the plan is.
Okay.
We just wanted to give you the guys the picture of
Just the
what's even
picture of
going
the
on.
assessment,
That's all we're
okay.
doing.
Okay.
So us as a community, as the representatives of the community, we need to decide how we want to attack this, how we want to approach this, who we want to partner with. Again, PSI is just here to give you the presentation of the overall current conditions. Now that you know what the problem is, now it's up to us to fix it.
Come up with a plan.
Okay.
Exactly.
Mr. Vasquez, do you have anything to add? So, I think what we have here is some things, what I'd like to be able to ask the council is to consider to put together a Bob Darrington committee, just like we've done everything else. That way we can get 3 council members to be on this committee, get together with city manager, deputy city manager, like to be able to put in our finance department, whether we're using the internal auditor. The reason is that we have to identify resources. The one thing that we have to do is we have to have a study, as staff is recommending. We do not have, we're not afforded, because to put together, there's no master plan for this. It would take what? How long minimum would it take to come up with a master plan? What an engineering company would take, how long?
10 to 15 months.
We don't have that time.
We don't.
So what we need to do is we need to come up with a short time study, and with this committee to be able to address several issues. At one point, we need what type of study, short-term type of study? We have to start addressing the immediate maintenance plan, not only in the plant, but also, how we're gonna, with the study's also gonna have to include the lines as far as what's causing the odors, minor repairs, mid and major repairs, equipment replacement, concrete degradation, then it goes on and on. And so in order for speed and having every 2 weeks or every once a month to come back, we attack it with the committee. Mr. Beckmeyer, put your task force together and come back as quickly as possible with a plan and options of finance. I think that we need to be open to all types of financing, from Pioneer to assessing, making maintenance repairs and things of that nature where we can have savings, kind of what we did with the water plant, anything like that. I really believe that this council is the last resort would be debt, and that takes time. And so, but we need to assess a level of where we at, from, if we're doing DEFCON 1 or we at the worst, we don't know. And so, so we'll put it in the hands of our staff to be able to put that committee. Anybody? Yes, sir.
And Mayor, I don't know if the public truly understands what we're talking about here. We're talking about every time you flush your commode in the city of Odessa. That's what we're talking about here. And I mean, if this isn't taken care of, we will have a public calamity on our hands.
Well, we have a public
so
health
it's
care.
imperative that it be taken care of quickly.
Well, one of the things that we have to keep in mind is that this thing was built in 1983. City of Odessa is growing. And so they wind up putting a line queue to be able to adapt that growth. We're not there yet, but as we grow, we're going to flow a larger mass of water, volume of water through this whole system. This is not gonna survive.
Well, it sounds like we put the cart before the horse when we put that line Q in. I mean, the line Q is just causing more problems for it. We could have done improvements to the plant.
But you had to do that to address the growth out north. Otherwise, you couldn't be building all the homes out there.
Well,
That's
this
the
is
problem with that.
line Q and line.
It is and it isn't.
Yeah, I get you.
Line Q and line
Put hands
P.
peanut in.
But nonetheless, the thing is I really believe that putting the committee together and shooting forward is a priority. And as we come up with a plan, we need to execute that plan. The biggest thing is identifying the resources.
And that's gonna be huge.
Yeah.
And, I understand, John, you may be able to speak to this, but I've been researching the Texas Water, what's it called, Texas Water Board? Am I saying that right? Because Development Board, yeah, they just got funded in November, I understand, with a lot of money. Do you have any, in other words, that's debt, and I understand that. Nobody wants debt, but, had we waited on the water treatment plant, we're 2 years down the road now, 3 years down the road on it, and we had to issue debt for that because we were in the same position. We're in exactly the same position with this wastewater treatment plant as we were with the water treatment plant 3 years ago this month when we got that thing started. So there's a lot of risk to the city and to the citizens of Odessa with us not acting it quickly and efficiently as we can. And I just don't see where the resources are going to come from. So finance is going to have to tell me where the money is and where we can get it. And hopefully without issuing debt. I don't want to issue debt anymore than anybody else, but what's your estimate? I asked that question a minute ago and the mayor didn't want you to answer it. Any idea?
No, we don't have an estimate because it can go in so many different ways.
Yeah.
Like repair versus new plant,
What does a new plant cost today?
Today it will probably be 300 million.
300 plus.
Tomorrow will probably be 400 plus, and
To
next
rebuild
week will
what
probably
you've
be
got
5. Yeah.
without factoring for future growth,
Yeah.
yes.
And it's such a big number. And but the thing is I think what we need to do is have a game plan, prioritize. And you already did that. Then we need to delve in a little bit more, put the committee together, and kind of narrow the scope of speculation and be a little more pointed.
Yeah.
And look at a number that say, hey, look, I'm comfortable with this. I think this is doable. And then we have a better understanding because we need to have a better, more continuity on what this number is. We know it's going to be expensive, but I want to be able to narrow that down and then be able to communicate that to the public because this is a priority. It's just been once again, we have gotten so far away from providing the basics. We're such into extracurricular activity projects. And this is what we meant about getting back to the basics. And water treatment plant, sewer plant, roads, and we're in that process. Any other further question? If not, I'll start volunteering people who want to be on this committee.
Well, and it's easy to get overwhelmed when we see this big, broad picture of all the problems that we have. But we got to look at it as, you know, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. You know, we got to take care of the issues that we can and start improving it little by little instead of looking at this as, man, we're going to need $400 million right now.
I think this council's eating its fair share.
Oh, it definitely has, but
I'm kind of full.
I know we can get a good game plan with this, Kevin.
Councilman Mata, though, has an extremely valid point there.
Yes.
We're talking about things today. Hoists aren't working, cranes aren't working. I'm sorry, that's a pretty small problem.
Right.
But it's a big problem when it's not fixed. I mean, I've worked on cranes all my life. They're not that hard to fix. Why
We
do
have the
we have them
expertise
done?
to do it.
Well, yeah,
You
we got
know,
all kinds of
and
oil field expertise to do all
Just
that.
like you said, in that
Just
one
totally
room,
blank.
the submergible pumps are, if it goes down right now, how do you pull it up? You don't. You're stuck. I mean, a 2-ton crane costs $1,000. So
So it's
it's to Councilman Mata's point. It's a big project and a lot needs to be done.
Yep.
But you gotta survive till you can get to that.
But the one thing I
Some small
don't, one
things.
thing I don't want to do is throw good money after bad. And her comment exactly a while ago was replacing what's 80 technology in there right now and just repairing it all is putting yourself right back in the same position. And with the technology that's available, we all know it's out there. You know, you don't want to spend the money for it, but the more we can get it technologically appropriate, as lack of a better word, the more chance we have to go in the future and not throw good money after bad.
It's still a time issue and you wanna be able
I get
to
it.
flush your toilet tomorrow.
I get it.
And just to be clear, I do plan on bringing a few things to council over the next few months that definitely need to be addressed. And as Mr. Beckmeyer alluded to, one bite at a time, right? So some of these things will be addressed immediately.
And every time you come up here, Kevin, bring finance with you, because we're
Yeah.
gonna be asking where this money's coming from.
So whenever we balk at that, just make reference to this meeting.
But I do want to reiterate to the city council, the team that you have out there right now is doing a phenomenal job. The chief operator, Mr. Guevara, has really spent a lot of time. He's really passionate about what he does. He cares about what he does, and he's really working with the team. We are trying to get new operators coming in, folks that are green, may not have a lot of experience. That gives us the opportunity to train them the way we want them to be
Correct,
trained.
yeah, correct.
And teach them the way that we want the city of Odessa the way to be done. Please don't misunderstand me. I think previous years, you've seen some issues, but we are on the right track now as far as staffing. And we've got a phenomenal team out there who are really working hard.
Mr. Niles, to your credit, thanks for the leadership
Yes.
out there.
Thank you.
And that's what I was talking to you about earlier. Thank you for everything you're doing. Please, on behalf of this council, extend our gratitude to everyone out there. And at least extend this message, that this is not gonna get ignored. This council is gonna do something about it. We will work very hard, sharpen the pencils, and we will make this happen. It is critical for this community to move forward. And with that,
Mr. Mayor,
yes, sir.
could I ask or express who I would like from the council on the committee?
Yeah.
I would like Mr. Thompson because I respect his business savvy in this. Mr. Mata with all the engineering and all that, and Mr. Connell, if you'd be willing to. And that's not anything against anyone.
Hey, I'm totally.
I'd love to.
okay with
There
that.
can be other,
This is called voluntold?
there could be, there could be other
You go for
volunteers.
You get volunteers?
Yeah, I get voluntold a lot, so this, I'm totally okay with that.
There could be other volunteers.
Well,
But based on the questioning and all today, I think that's a good group. We'll then pull somebody in from city management, from Kevin's group, if not Kevin himself, or Kevin and someone else. from finance and from audit and pull it all together.
Sounds good. Sounds good. We got a plan? Got a plan. Let it be said, let it be done.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you very
Appreciate
much.
y'all.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate
Appreciate
it.
your hard work.
Have a
Happy
Merry
holidays.
Christmas.
Thank y'all for coming.
Chip, we say Christmas around here.
I wasn't gonna say that, but happy holidays.
Any other questions? Any other comments?
It is a priority.
Yes, yes it is, sir. Seeing that there is no more business before this council, I have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Swanner, second by Councilmember
Second.
Vasquez. All in favor indicating by saying aye.
Aye.